Welcome back to The Heat. We're discussing the EU summit and efforts to fight terrorism across Europe after the deadly terror attacks in France. Joining us now from Berlin is Annegret Bendiek. She's a senior associate at the German Institute for International and Security Affairs. Also with us is Dr. Mustafa Yoldas. He's the chairman of the Islamic Council of Hamburg. And joining us from London is Miqdaad Versi. He's the Assistant Secretary General with the Muslim Council of Britain. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Annegret, these proposals have been made by the European Union. Are they going to keep Europe safer?
Hopefully, but I would say in the light of the Paris attacks, this is a new package of counter-terrorism measures. And I think the most important is that the European Union member states agreed on a better information sharing in the framework of the Schengen information system. And they would like to introduce a systemic screening of potential terrorists.
Dr. Yoldas, what do you make of these proposals that came out of the European Union in Brussels?
I think we all have responsibilities in this society. We as the Muslim community try our best to remove all radical imams and those who try to get influence in our communities. Therefore, it is important that the imams should be brought up at the universities of Germany or in European universities, that we can prepare the young people better for the society in which they are living. And this is one of the measures, but the Muslims are not able to solve the problem on their own. We need a whole responsibility for the media, for the politics, and for the whole society in Europe.
Miqdaad, these proposals that came out of that European Union meeting were prompted for the most part by the attacks in Paris on Charlie Hebdo, the Paris satirical newspaper. Yet, in the immediate aftermath of those attacks, we had attacks on about a dozen mosques in France. They didn't seem to get much publicity. There was no march. At most, they probably got a paragraph in a newspaper. What do you make of that? Is there a double standard here?
Thank you very much for having me. It's important to look at this on a very, very open and fair, non-discriminatory basis. And I think what you've highlighted is an important point. The lives of all people are equal. This is not something where one person's life is worth more than any other. And Europol reports have shown that when it comes to terrorism, a significant proportion of terrorism is outside the Muslim community. And we need to look at this completely fairly and say that, yes, there is terrorism that comes from the Muslim community, but there's also terrorism that comes from far-right groups, from nationalist groups, from others as well. And we have to try and look at these, and any policy that we have has to look at things in a fair, non-discriminatory way. And if that happens, then you might be able to get the buy-in of all different groups involved.
Right, Annegret, what do you make of that these measures that are being undertaken by the European Union needs to target all extremist groups, not just one group?
Yeah, I think that is also the approach by the European Union. So it's a two-step approach. First of all, they would like to invent new indicators for prospect terrorists. So, for example, the age or, for example, traveling routes they made before entering the European Union again when they were traveling abroad. And the second step is, and this has to be decided in the next months, is to introduce a long-term check of travelers entering the European Union. This is very technical in the sense, but I think so far the information sharing in the European Union was based on a very bilateral information exchange, and they see that only a handful of member states were put data into this common database, but I think that it makes sense that to enlarge and to engage more and more member states of the European Union to put their relevant data into this common database.
Right, and we don't know what those defined conditions are right now. Dr. Yoldas, there's going to be a great deal of information that's going to be exchanged between countries sent from one place to the other. What about privacy concerns here? Are you concerned, for instance, that airline passenger information is going to be exchanged? It's not just the names of one or two passengers, all the passengers on a plane are going to have their names sent to another country. It's going to be exchanged throughout Europe. Aren't there privacy concerns here?
Yes, we should not be concerned with only the terrorists or violent groups among the Muslims. We should consider violence as a whole problem of our society, because Islamophobia is the twin sister of racism or radical groups from the right in Europe. This is a problem that we are facing these days, because a lot of young people have the feeling that they are being discriminated, they are not welcome in the European societies. So that is the base in which the young people are being captured by the radical groups to move to Syria or other places on earth. And this is a whole problem in which the peaceful Muslims are living. They are between putting a distance to the radical groups on one hand. On the other hand is a general suspicion on Muslims.
Right, Miqdaad, Dr. Yoldas brings up an interesting point there, the point that many young Muslims feel that they're discriminated against. We know that from various reports that they are alienated, they live in these ghettos in major European cities, high unemployment rates, targeted by the police, a lot of violence in these areas. Then, of course, we also have the rise of far right-wing groups. We've seen big demonstrations in Germany. In Dresden, there was a demonstration of about 25,000 people not so long ago. It's not just a security problem, is it? It's a socio-economic problem as well.
Very much so. And I think, just going back 1 second, the whole idea of looking at travel routes seems to entirely talk only about Muslim terrorism or Islamic terrorism. I mean, the fact that there is so much, according to the Europol report, so much terrorism that is taking place by far-right and nationalist groups that hasn't even been looked at because we're looking at only these ideas of travel routes. I mean, we have examples of people coming back from the holy pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia being stopped because they are potential terrorists. We have people who go for religious pilgrimages to Iraq and Syria, or not Syria that much now, and they come back and they get questioned by the police when they come back. This kind of automatic assumption that when you want to fulfill your religious duties, you are more likely to be a terrorist is something that has to be thrown away immediately and not be considered to be an important part of the fight against terrorism. We all work together, we're all united in the idea that we need to fight against those who try and disrupt our safety and security here in the UK and across Europe, but we cannot see religion as part of the cause. Secondly, what we want to do is something that's effective. Now, when for example, if you're going to be screening everybody who is a potential terrorist in this way, what happens is that you then don't focus your resources in the right way. We saw that, for example, in France. All of the individuals who were part of this attack, the brutal attack, all of them were under surveillance by the security services. So we have to try and say, well, look, being under surveillance is now part and parcel of life. Why can't we focus on those who are really the key concerns rather than doing this blanket approach?
Annegret, is there a danger that everybody's going to be swept up by these new security measures in Europe? It's not going to be targeted at certain individuals, at people who may be behaving suspiciously or anything like that. Everybody's going to be swept up, including, as Miqdaad just pointed out, people who may be going on a pilgrimage, say, to Saudi Arabia. When they come back, they would be suspected.
Yeah, in a sense, of course, it is problematic. Therefore, I think it has to be justified in the sense that that should be under high accountable measures, in the sense that they have to report the security agencies why they are doing what, for what purposes, and do in the end the instruments justify really the goal here. But nevertheless, I partly agree to my colleagues, because I think that, of course, we have to distinguish between short-term measures and long-term measures. But I think in the framework of short-time measures, it makes for me absolutely sense to introduce, for example, a European passenger name record system, because we are so far completely dependent on the US system, because there is an exchange program between the Europeans and the Americans. But if we would like to introduce new data protection standards here in Europe, which are higher than in the US, it makes sense to have your own European system that runs under European data protection standards. And therefore, I think for this, of course, we need also a new regulation for the data retention problematic. As you know, that was put on hold by the European Court of Justice in April, and now the member states are under pressure to reintroduce this data retention framework, but in accordance to European law and to member states' provisions.
Dr. Yoldas, you have been involved in a program to de-radicalize young Muslims. What does that program involve and how challenging has it been? And I'm afraid we've just got about 40 seconds for this answer.
Yes, this is a program which is established by the Senate here in Hamburg with the participation of the Muslim groups. It is divided into prevention and intervention. The Muslim groups are involved in the program of prevention. We are trying to involve mosques and the imams and the schools, the parents, to prevent young people to get into the groups of extremists which try to pick them up and bring them to Syria or elsewhere. So this is a great challenge to us because on one hand these young people are they have lost their orientation.
Right.
They have experiences of alienation, everyday discrimination, and we have to show them that they can come forward very much in this society, having a good school and to bring themselves to the university, to high school, and have their position in this society. The challenge is for us young Muslims. We try to say this is our jihad is being educated. Education is the bigger jihad than to go to Syria and be feed for the drones and the war there.
Right, thanks to all of you for joining us, and that's all the time we have. But the conversation continues online. Join us on CCTV America's Facebook page to comment on this or any other show, or chat with us on Twitter at @CCTV_America. I'm Anand Naidu in Washington, D.C. Thanks for watching.